A night among the peasants. The sun had just begun its descent behind the hills when the village of Eldergrove softened into evening. A warm golden haze stretched over the fields, casting long shadows across stone cottages and the winding dirt path that curled through the heart of the peasant hamlet. Wheat swayed gently in the summer breeze, and the scent of tilled soil lingered in the air like a familiar lullaby. Lanterns began to glow behind windows framed with wild ivy. The soft clinking of buckets being filled at the well mixed with the rustle of baskets being carried home, brimming with the day's final harvest. Chickens clucked lazily in their pens as their keepers secured the gates, and the lowing of cows drifted through the valley as they settled into barns for the night. By the river that bordered the village, a boy named Dallin sat on a flat stone with his bare feet in the cool water. He was no more than 10, with hair the color of sun-dried straw and eyes the shade of the river itself. He watched the way the fading sunlight turned the surface of the water into gold, unmoving and silent except for the rhythmic kicking of his heels below. From the fields beyond the village, Elder Tom returned with a slow gait, leaning on his hand-carved staff. His white beard trembled with each step, but his eyes, sharp as ever, took in every detail of the twilight settling over Eldergrove. He paused by the wooden fence that lined the path and gazed out across the rows of wheat, nodding once with quiet approval. "It will be a good harvest," he whispered to the wind. At the bakery, the oven's last embers flickered as Mira, the baker's daughter, pulled the final loaf from the heat. The smell of rosemary and roasted crust filled the kitchen as she carefully wrapped the bread in linen and placed it on the sill to cool. Her mother was already washing the day's dishes, humming a tune only the eldest villagers would remember. Of patience and peace. The fields and forests, soaked with gentle moisture, breathed in the night, readying themselves for the new day to come. All through Eldergrove, the peasants slept soundly, embraced by the rhythms of earth and sky. The village rested, a sanctuary of calm amid the turning world, held safe by the steady pulse of simple life and enduring quiet. As dawn's first light painted the horizon with soft hues of pink and gold, Eldergrove began to stir gently from its slumber. The village, nestled beside the winding river and surrounded by rolling hills, felt alive with quiet promise. Mira rose slowly from her bed, the cool morning air brushing against her skin as she stepped outside. Dew clung to the wildflowers and herbs in her garden, sparkling like tiny jewels in the newborn sunlight. She inhaled deeply, the scent of earth and fresh growth filling her lungs with calm and clarity. Elder Tom shuffled down the worn path toward the ancient oak tree at the village square, his staff tapping softly against the stones. His eyes, clear and thoughtful, followed the dance of morning light through the leaves. He paused beneath the tree's sprawling branches, feeling the warmth of the sun on his weathered face and the gentle breeze whispering through the boughs. Children's laughter began to fill the air as they gathered near the riverbank, their feet barely making a sound on the soft grass. They tossed pebbles into the water, watching the ripples spread like tiny waves, their voices low and happy, blending seamlessly with the gentle murmur of the flowing river. Jonan descended carefully from the granary tower, stretching as he reached solid ground. He paused by the river's edge, letting cool water slip between his fingers and watching the reflections shimmer on the surface. The peaceful rhythm of the village wrapped around him like a familiar cloak, steady and reassuring. Throughout Eldergrove, the peasants moved with ease and grace, their light a quiet promise in the dark. The village below was hushed, every breath deep, and even as sleep began to draw its gentle veil over the land. And so, under the vast sky, Eldergrove rested, wrapped in the soft embrace of night and the enduring peace of a life lived close to the earth. Each soul held safe in the quiet, steady heart of the valley, where dreams moved like the river, constant, soothing, eternal. The village of Eldergrove lay enveloped in the cool embrace of night, its cottages glowing faintly with the soft light of oil lamps behind curtained windows. The air was filled with the subtle scent of damp earth and wild herbs, carried gently on the breeze that rustled through the trees lining the riverbank. Beneath the ancient oak, Elder Tom rested his weathered hands upon the gnarled bark, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his fingertips. The quiet was deep, a stillness so complete it seemed to cradle the village in a protective embrace. Somewhere nearby, the low call of an owl echoed softly, a lullaby for the night. Inside her small cottage, Mira lay curled beneath a thick woolen blanket, the steady rhythm of her breathing mingling with the gentle patter of rain beginning to fall outside. The droplets tapped softly against the windowpane, a soothing cadence that lulled her deeper into peaceful dreams, visions of sun-dappled meadows and flowing streams, untouched and serene. Jonan, standing watch in the granary tower, pulled his cloak tighter around him as he gazed up at the star-filled sky. The constellations shimmered like scattered gems, their light reaching across the ages to guide and comfort. In this moment, the restless world beyond seemed distant and faded, replaced by the quiet strength of home. The river flowed steadily, its surface rippling beneath the soft rain, singing a timeless song that spoke of journeys and return. The bleating of sheep blending into a symphony of calm. Each task was carried out with care, a quiet dance of nurture and respect between people and land. The river continued its journey, flowing with gentle persistence through the valley. Its surface mirrored the sky, sometimes clear blue, sometimes dappled with clouds. Along its banks, reeds swayed lazily, and dragonflies skimmed the water like fleeting sparks of light. The sound of flowing water was a balm, a reminder of life's constant movement even in moments of stillness. As the day unfolded, the village held its gentle rhythm, a balance of work and rest, of effort and ease. Meals were shared beneath spreading trees, where the shade offered refuge from the growing warmth of the sun. Conversations were soft, woven from stories of days past and dreams yet to come. The bond between the peasants was deep and unspoken, held in shared glances and the simple acts of kindness that wove the fabric of their community. When afternoon turned to evening, the sky softened into shades of rose and lavender. Lanterns were lit, their flickering flames casting warm light that danced across faces and walls. The river caught the colors of sunset, shimmering with a gentle fire that promised rest and renewal. Elder Tom returned to his cottage, his steps slow and measured. He paused for a moment beneath the oak, feeling the coolness of the stone bench and the whisper of leaves overhead. With a deep breath, he carried the day's peace into his home, where the quiet comfort of familiar walls awaited him. Mira prepared her evening meal with the same care she gave every task, softly slicing herbs, stirring simmering stews, and setting the table with worn but cherished dishes. The scent of fresh bread mingled with rosemary and thyme, filling the cottage with warmth and memory. Jonan stood once more by the river, watching as twilight settled into night. The stars blinked awake, distant and shimmering. Clear and steady despite the years etched into his face, followed the slow dance of sunlight filtering through the leaves. For a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the sun soak into his bones and the peaceful sounds of the village wrap around him like a well-worn cloak. Nearby, Jonan descended carefully from the granary tower where he had kept watch through the night. His dark cloak trailed behind him as he moved with quiet grace, feet familiar with every step of the stone stairs. When he reached the earth, he paused by the riverbank, dipping his fingers into the cool, flowing water. The river spoke to him in murmurs and ripples, stories of journeys far beyond the village, of distant mountains and wide seas. Yet here, in this small valley, he found the steady pulse of home, strong and unyielding. As the sun climbed higher, the village awoke fully, each cottage filling with light and life. Mira returned to her kitchen, where the scent of rising dough mingled with fresh herbs picked from the garden. Her movements were deliberate, gentle, kneading bread with hands that knew the rhythm of the earth. The oven, heated by the embers of the night's fire, awaited the loaves, promising warmth and sustenance. The children of Eldergrove emerged from their beds, faces still flushed with sleep and eyes bright with the soft glow of morning. They gathered by the old well, their laughter bubbling quietly like a gentle stream. Their games were simple, their joys found in the turning of a leaf, the smoothness of a pebble, the song of a bird overhead. They were small keepers of a world where time moved with the breath of the earth. Throughout the fields, the peasants moved with patient hands and steady hearts. Some tended to the growing crops, their fingers tracing the contours of leaves and stems, feeling the pulse of life beneath the soil. Others guided livestock through sun-dappled pastures, the soft lowing of cattle and... The village of Eldergrove was cradled in the gentle arms of early morning, where the first light spilled slowly across the landscape like warm honey poured over cool stone. The air was crisp yet soft, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and budding flowers, a quiet promise of growth and renewal. Each breath felt full of possibility, yet unhurried, a whispered invitation to pause and simply be. Mira woke before the sun had fully risen, her eyes fluttering open to the soft gray blue of dawn filtering through the linen curtains of her small cottage. She lay for a moment, savoring the silence that filled the room, broken only by the faint murmur of the river winding its way past the village. The gentle pulse of the water was a steady heartbeat beneath the quiet world, a soothing companion to the morning's slow awakening. Rising carefully, she padded across the wooden floorboards, her bare feet cool against the aged planks. Outside, her garden was still wrapped in the delicate mist of dawn, droplets clinging like tiny jewels to the leaves of herbs and wildflowers. She knelt beside the soil, hands brushing softly over the earth as if greeting an old friend. The world was new again, fresh and waiting, full of soft light and possibility. The village stirred with the gentle rhythm of life well lived. Smoke began to curl lazily from chimneys, promising the warmth of hearth fires and the rich scent of baking bread. Doors opened slowly, revealing neighbors who exchanged quiet greetings and smiles, their voices low and comforting like the hum of a familiar song. There was no rush, no need to hurry, only the patient flow of days shaped by seasons and stories shared across generations. In the village square, the ancient oak tree stood tall and steady, its leaves rustling softly in the morning breeze. Beneath its wide branches, Elder Tom settled onto his carved wooden bench, his weathered hands folded lightly in his lap. His eyes. The first light of dawn began to stretch its fingers across the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. The village of Eldergrove stirred gently beneath the awakening day, as if reluctant to leave the tender embrace of night. Mira opened her eyes slowly, the lingering calm of sleep still wrapped around her like a warm cloak. She rose quietly, stepping barefoot onto the cool wooden floor. Outside, the garden greeted her with the fresh scent of dew-kissed herbs and blooming flowers. Elder Tom shuffled toward the window of his cottage, his hands resting lightly on the sill. He watched as birds began their morning songs, their melodies weaving through the crisp air and filling the valley with gentle life. Jonan descended from the granary tower, his movements deliberate and unhurried. He paused by the riverbank, dipping his fingers into the cool water and watching as it rippled softly over smooth stones. Throughout Eldergrove, the peasants began their day with soft smiles and quiet tasks, honoring the peaceful rest that had carried them through the night. The village hummed with a slow, steady rhythm, an enduring promise of calm amidst the ever-turning world. And as the sun climbed higher, casting light on the fields and forests beyond, Eldergrove embraced the new day, ready to carry its peace forward until night would fall once more. The quiet village of Eldergrove remained cocooned in darkness, the only movement the gentle sway of trees stirred by the night breeze. The moon, a pale guardian in the sky, cast soft silver light over rooftops and fields, bathing everything in a calm glow. Inside the cottages, peaceful breaths rose and fell, the peasants lost to dreams where worries faded like morning mist. Mira dreamt of endless meadows bathed in warm sunlight, the scent of lavender thick in the air, and the gentle hum of bees weaving through blossoms. Elder Tom's mind wandered through memories of harvest festivals, the laughter of friends and family blending with the crackle of fires and the sweet taste of fresh bread. His face, worn by years but softened by contentment, relaxed fully in sleep. Jonan, still perched high in the granary tower, felt the cool night air wrap around him like a soft shawl. His eyes were closed, but his spirit was wide awake with the steady pulse of the village below, a pulse that promised peace, resilience, and the quiet strength of a life lived close to the land. The river sang its slow, steady song beneath the stars, a lullaby older than the village itself. The trees whispered softly in return, leaves rustling gently as if to cradle the night in their arms. All was still. All was well. And as the world awaited the coming dawn, the peasants of Eldergrove continued to sleep, carried on the tides of calm and rest. Night deepened over Eldergrove, wrapping the village in a velvet quiet so complete it seemed the very air was holding its breath. The stars glittered softly above, their distant light pooling like scattered diamonds across the dark canvas of the sky. Inside her cottage, Mira lay nestled beneath a woolen blanket, the gentle rise and fall of her chest steady and calm. Her dreams carried her to fields of wildflowers swaying under a gentle breeze, petals brushing against her fingertips like whispers of the earth itself. Elder Tom sat silently by the fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows upon the walls. Though his eyes were closed, the peaceful lines of his face spoke of a soul at rest, cradled by memories of seasons long past and the steady heartbeat of the land. Jonan, high in the granary tower, watched the moon glide slowly across the night sky. Wrapped in a heavy cloak, he felt the cool air press softly against his skin, the quiet so profound it echoed like a gentle song. In his heart, he carried the strength of the village, its stories, its hopes, and the timeless rhythm of the peasants' lives. The river whispered below, its waters gliding over stones worn smooth by centuries. The sound was a lullaby, ancient and tender, calling all who listened to surrender to the peace of night. All through Eldergrove, the village slept, untroubled, embraced by the gentle arms of darkness, their breath soft as the earth beneath them. And so, the night held them safe, until dawn would return once more with its soft light and quiet promise. The afternoon sun filtered through the branches of the towering oaks that bordered Eldergrove, casting dappled patterns across the worn paths and golden fields. The air was warm but softened by the gentle breeze that carried the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers and freshly turned earth. Mira gathered handfuls of lavender and chamomile, carefully weaving the fragrant stems into small bundles. The scent was calming, a natural balm that soothed tired minds and weary bodies. She hummed softly as she worked, her voice barely more than a whisper against the quiet hum of the village. Nearby, Elder Tom sat beneath the shade of the ancient oak, his eyes half closed as he listened to the distant song of the river. His hands rested lightly on his staff, fingers tracing the worn carvings that told stories of seasons past. Time seemed to slow around him, each moment stretching gently into the next like a soft sigh. Jonan wandered along the edge of the forest, the crunch of leaves underfoot mingling with the distant calls of birds. He paused to watch a pair of deer grazing quietly in a sunlit clearing, their movements slow and unhurried. The peaceful scene filled him with a quiet sense of belonging, a reminder of the deep connection between the peasants and the land that sustained them. As evening approached, the village began to prepare for rest once more. Lanterns were lit and placed in windows, casting warm pools of light that flickered softly against the gathering shadows. The scent of herbs and fresh bread mingled with the cool night air, wrapping the village in comfort and calm. The river's gentle murmur became the evening's lullaby, a soothing sound that whispered through the trees and carried the village into sleep. Under the watchful stars, Eldergrove breathed in quiet harmony, its people resting deeply, cradled by the earth and the endless sky. The morning light slowly seeped into the village, brushing the rooftops with a gentle glow. The river's soft murmur grew louder as the water caught the sun's first rays, shimmering like a ribbon of silver winding through the valley. The earth, still cool from night's embrace, began to warm beneath the growing light. Mira rose quietly, pulling her shawl tight around her shoulders as she stepped outside. The garden was drenched in dew, each leaf sparkling like a tiny jewel. She bent to gather fresh herbs, the fragrance mingling with the crisp morning air. Around her, the village stirred with soft sounds, the creak of wooden doors, the low bleating of sheep, the distant crow of a rooster greeting the day. Elder Tom made his way along the familiar path to the oak tree, leaning on his carved staff. His footsteps were measured, steady, as he greeted the waking birds with a nod and a smile. The village was alive yet calm, each movement part of the gentle rhythm that had defined Eldergrove for generations. Jonan descended the granary tower, his eyes reflecting the pale light. He paused at the riverbank, watching the water glide over smooth stones, tracing the path it had carved long ago. The peace of the morning settled over him like a balm, quieting the restlessness that often lingered in his youth. Throughout Eldergrove, windows opened to welcome the sun. The scent of baking bread drifted from the bakery, mingling with the earthy perfume of fresh soil and wildflowers. Children's laughter rippled softly as they chased one another near the fields, their feet barely stirring the grass. In this corner of the world, the peasants embraced the day with gratitude and gentle hearts, knowing that night's rest had renewed them for whatever tasks awaited. The cycle continued, unbroken and sacred, a quiet promise woven into the very fabric of the valley. And as the sun climbed higher, the village moved forward, steady, peaceful, and whole. And so, as the village breathed together beneath the vast sky, the peasants of Eldergrove drifted once more into peaceful sleep, held safe by the earth, the stars, and the enduring quiet of home. The soft glow of dawn was still hours away when a gentle breeze stirred the branches of the ancient oak tree, whispering secrets only the night could understand. The village lay quiet beneath the blanket of stars, every cottage holding within it the peaceful slumber of its inhabitants. In her small room, Mira shifted slightly under her linen sheets, the faint scent of herbs from her garden mingling with the cool night air drifting through the open window. Outside, the river's lullaby continued, a soothing murmur that carried the steady rhythm of life itself. Elder Tom's breath was slow and steady, each exhale a quiet prayer for the village he had served so long. His dreams took him back to golden fields and laughter-filled days, moments woven deep into his heart. Across the valley, Jonan's watch had long ended, but his spirit remained tethered to the land. High in the granary tower, he dreamed of wide-open skies and gentle winds, of journeys yet to come and the timeless bond between people and place. The animals rested too, the soft snuffling of a sleeping lamb, the rhythmic chewing of a dozing horse, the occasional flick of a fox's tail as it dreamed beneath the bushes. Nature itself seemed to breathe in time with the village, a living harmony of rest and renewal. And as the first faint light of morning stretched across the horizon, the quiet valley held fast to its promise, that here, in this humble corner of the world, peace was not fleeting but eternal, carried on the backs of peasants who knew the true meaning of rest. The night waned, but the tranquility lingered, a gentle invitation to dream, to breathe, to be. And so, the peasants slept on. As the day unfolded, the peasants of Eldergrove embraced the simple joys of life, the sowing of seeds, the baking of bread, the sharing of stories beneath the shade of trees. Their hearts were light, their spirits calm, held steady by the knowledge that in this quiet valley, rest and renewal were always within reach. And as the sun journeyed across the sky, the village thrummed softly with the promise of another night filled with dreams and gentle sleep. As the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the sky with hues of amber and rose, the village of Eldergrove settled into the gentle rhythms of evening. Shadows stretched long across the fields, and a cool breeze whispered through the trees, carrying with it the subtle scent of wild flowers and freshly turned earth. Mira moved softly through her kitchen, preparing a simple meal with care. The scent of herbs and baked bread mingled in the air, comforting and familiar. Outside, lanterns flickered to life, casting warm pools of light that danced on stone walls and cobblestone paths. Elder Tom found his way back to the ancient oak in the village square, his favorite resting place. He settled into his wooden chair with a contented sigh, watching as the last light of day slipped away. Around him, the village grew quiet, children tucked into beds, animals settled into their stalls, and neighbors exchanged soft greetings before retreating indoors. Jonan stood atop the granary tower, his gaze sweeping the peaceful valley below. The stars began to appear, one by one, twinkling like distant fires kindled just for Eldergrove. He took a deep breath of the cool night air, feeling the steady heartbeat of the land beneath his feet. The river flowed gently, its surface catching the starlight and reflecting 1,000 tiny sparks. The night was calm and deep, wrapped in the kind of silence that soothes the soul and invites restful dreams. The animals rested too, the soft snuffling of a sleeping lamb, the rhythmic chewing of a dozing horse, the occasional flick of a fox's tail as it dreamed beneath the bushes. Nature itself seemed to breathe in time with the village, a living harmony of rest and renewal. And as the first faint light of morning stretched across the horizon, the quiet valley held fast to its promise, that here, in this humble corner of the world, peace was not fleeting but eternal, carried on the backs of peasants who knew the true meaning of rest. The night waned, but the tranquility lingered, a gentle invitation to dream, to breathe, to be. And so, the peasants slept on. As the morning sun rose higher, casting warm golden light across the fields of Eldergrove, the village slowly stirred from its peaceful slumber. Soft whispers of awakening floated on the breeze, birds singing, leaves rustling, and the distant murmur of the river weaving its way through the valley. Mira stepped quietly outside her cottage, the cool morning air filling her lungs as she began her daily routine. She moved with gentle purpose, tending to the herbs in her garden, the morning dew still clinging to each leaf and stem. The scent of earth and growing things surrounded her, a comforting reminder of the cycle of life. In the village square, Elder Tom slowly made his way along the cobblestone path, his staff tapping rhythmically with each step. The light in his eyes was steady and calm, reflecting the enduring strength of the community he cherished. He paused for a moment beneath the ancient oak tree, feeling the warmth of the sun on his weathered face. Children gathered by the riverbank, their laughter soft and joyous as they dipped their toes into the cool water. Nearby, Jonan descended from the granary tower, his movements slow and deliberate as he prepared for the day ahead. The peaceful rhythm of Eldergrove continued unbroken, each member of the village moving in harmony with the land and one another. The children, their energy waning, nestled beside their mothers and fathers. Soft lullabies drifted through open windows, weaving a blanket of comfort that wrapped around the homes like a warm quilt. Even the animals seemed to sense the calm, their movements slow and peaceful. As darkness deepened, the stars appeared one by one, twinkling softly overhead. The river reflected their light, its surface shimmering with 1,000 tiny sparks. Jonan, perched once more in the granary tower, gazed up at the vast night sky, feeling the quiet strength of the village beneath him. The world outside may have been restless and loud, but here, in the heart of the valley, peace reigned. The peasants rested easily, cradled by the steady rhythm of earth, water, and sky. And so, as night wrapped its gentle arms around Eldergrove, the village breathed in harmony, ready once more to dream beneath the watchful stars. The soft glow of dawn was still hours away when a gentle breeze stirred the branches of the ancient oak tree, whispering secrets only the night could understand. The village lay quiet beneath the blanket of stars, every cottage holding within it the peaceful slumber of its inhabitants. In her small room, Mira shifted slightly under her linen sheets, the faint scent of herbs from her garden mingling with the cool night air drifting through the open window. Outside, the river's lullaby continued, a soothing murmur that carried the steady rhythm of life itself. Elder Tom's breath was slow and steady, each exhale a quiet prayer for the village he had served so long. His dreams took him back to golden fields and laughter-filled days, moments woven deep into his heart. Across the valley, Jonan's watch had long ended, but his spirit remained tethered to the land. High in the granary tower, he dreamed of wide-open skies and gentle winds, of journeys yet to come and the timeless bond between people and place. Offering him smiles not out of duty, but out of warmth. He returned each one with a quiet twinkle in his eye. Along the river's bend, Elda sat with her cat in her lap, listening to the wind tease the reeds. Her fingers moved slowly over a strand of yarn, twisting it into patterns with no particular plan, just movement, soft and slow, for the sake of being still in motion. Time passed. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just enough. The sun shifted westward, painting the village in soft amber light. Shadows grew longer. The breeze cooled ever so slightly. A bird landed on the corner of a cottage roof and chirped once, then flew off toward the trees. And still, Eldergrove held its gentle rhythm. There was no rush, no noise, no need to chase the hours. The peasants lived within the day, not ahead of it, breathing, walking, pausing, smiling. It was a place the world forgot. Or perhaps a place that never needed the world. As evening descended, the sky softened into hues of lavender and rose, wrapping Eldergrove in a tender embrace. The gentle hum of crickets began to fill the air, blending with the distant murmur of the river's steady flow. The peasants moved quietly through their final tasks of the day, their footsteps light against the worn paths. Mira gathered the last of the herbs from her garden, her fingers brushing the leaves with a practiced tenderness. She paused to breathe deeply, savoring the earthy scent mingled with the cool air. Nearby, the soft glow of lanterns flickered behind cottage windows, signaling the approach of night. Elder Tom settled into his favorite chair beneath the ancient oak in the village square. The familiar creak of the wooden seat welcomed him as he pulled his cloak tighter against the evening chill. Around him, the village was hushed, bathed in the gentle light of the setting sun. That there was no need to rush. And so, the peasants moved through their morning like a slow breeze passing through tall grass, together, but unrushed. Every step, every task, every glance was wrapped in calm. The noise of the outside world, of kingdoms and merchants and distant roads, did not reach them here. It never had. Because in Eldergrove, time was a circle, not a line. A rhythm, not a race. And the day, like the night, belonged to peace. By midday, the sun had warmed every rooftop and garden in Eldergrove. The mist had long since vanished, and the river now shimmered like liquid glass, winding gently through the edge of the village as though in no hurry to reach its destination. Wildflowers danced softly along its banks, bowing their heads in the breeze. In the village square, the quiet remained. Children had taken to drawing with bits of charcoal on flat stones, their pictures of sheep, suns, and crooked houses blending with laughter too gentle to disturb the peace. An old dog lay sprawled beneath the bench, its belly rising and falling in slow, contented breaths. The blacksmith, Osric, stepped from his shaded workshop, wiping his hands on a cloth that had seen better days. Though the forge was cool and still, he stood there for a moment, simply watching the clouds pass over the hills beyond the village. His eyes, dark and thoughtful, tracked a hawk sailing lazily overhead. At the edge of the fields, Mira and her mother had laid out a simple cloth on the grass beneath the pear tree. A basket of fresh bread, slices of soft cheese, and a jug of herb water sat between them. They didn't speak much, just sat and watched the butterflies drift from bloom to bloom, letting silence fill the spaces where words would normally go. Further down the path, Elder Tom strolled past the hedgerows, leaning lightly on his staff. His shadow moved gently across the dirt road, which curved past grazing goats and faded stone walls. Villagers nodded as he passed. Of stillness, of softness, of the hush that held the village through the dark, would linger in their limbs and hearts all day, like a quiet note playing beneath everything. It would remain, waiting to return when the sun fell once more. Because in Eldergrove, sleep was never far. And peace was not a gift. It was a way of life. The gentle warmth of the morning deepened, casting long golden fingers across the valley as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Shadows stretched and softened over cobblestone paths and fences laced with wild flowers. Chickens clucked quietly in their coops. Horses shuffled in their stalls. Yet even in wakefulness, the village of Eldergrove moved slowly, as if honoring the stillness of the night that had just passed. Along the banks of the river, children began to gather small pebbles, tossing them into the water with lazy splashes that danced in the sunlight. They spoke in hushed tones, their laughter light and quick like birdsong, never disturbing the quiet rhythm of the land around them. In the pasture beyond the baker's cottage, a pair of oxen chewed thoughtfully at the grass, their tails swishing slowly, eyes half-lidded in the comfort of early sun. Their farmer, a stout man with a weathered face and kind eyes, leaned against the fence with a wooden mug of tea in hand, steam curling into the breeze. He watched the valley as though seeing it again for the first time. Inside her garden, Mira knelt between rows of herbs, running her fingers through soft soil and brushing dew from the thyme and mint. A small wooden bowl beside her filled slowly with greens. She paused now and then to simply breathe, deeply, slowly, letting the scent of earth and the sound of the waking village wash over her. The bell in the village square did not ring loudly. It never needed to. It chimed gently, once, then twice, a sound more like a song than a signal. It was not a command to work, but a reminder that the day was unfolding, that there was time enough. But watched as golden light crept across the wooden beams of his ceiling. He breathed in deeply, the scent of hearth ash and linen grounding him in the present, as if the world had waited overnight just to welcome him back. Outside, the fields were bathed in amber. Dew clung to every stalk and leaf, catching the sun in 1,000 glimmering points. Crows took flight from the edge of the wheat rows, wings stretching wide as they called to each other. Their voices echoed across the still air. In the communal hall, the first sleeper stirred. Cale stretched, then sat up slowly, rubbing his eyes and looking toward the low-burning hearth. He didn't speak. No one did. Morning in Eldergrove began with quiet, a slow unfolding rather than a sudden start. Down the path, the baker's chimney puffed out its first curl of smoke, a signal more reliable than any bell. Mira tied her apron without a word, moving gently around the kitchen as the dough she'd prepared the day before rose on the counter, ready to meet the fire. Elda lit her lamp, not because it was dark, but because she liked its glow in the morning hours. She fed her cat, straightened the folded shawl on the back of her chair, and smiled at the day as if it were an old friend just arriving over the hill. The village awoke, not all at once, but like a field of wildflowers touched by sun, one bloom at a time, stretching softly toward the light. And through it all, the river flowed, clear, steady, eternal. It caught the morning light, and shimmered like a mirror to the sky. Its song had changed now. No longer a lullaby, but a quiet encouragement. A hum of movement, of life returning. And so life did return. The peasants rose. They opened shutters. They poured water from clay pitchers. They stepped outside and greeted one another not with noise, but with knowing nods and peaceful eyes. The world had turned again. A night had passed. And rest, deep and undisturbed, had done its work. But the memory of that sleep. In the blacksmith's home, Osric slept soundly. His tools rested in a neat row by the door, and his boots lay at the foot of his bed. He dreamt of forging not weapons, but wind chimes, delicate things that sang when no one touched them, ringing softly in the breeze. His workshop was high on a hill, and the wind that carried music all day. The village's animals, too, seemed to understand this sacred pause. Hens nestled deeper into their straw, sheep dozed without stirring, and the dog in the baker's yard slept with its head on its paws, its ears twitching gently to the last notes of night. And in every cottage, barn, and corner of the valley, peace remained. Thick and gentle. A blanket of silence not heavy, but whole. A silence that wasn't absence, but presence. Full of meaning. Full of breath. Outside, the river caught the faintest light, its surface trembling with a soft shimmer, as if waking slowly. Its voice was no longer a lullaby, but neither yet a song of day. It was the whisper of a world preparing to rise. And still, for one more breath, one more beat of the valley's heart, the peasants slept. The first rays of sunlight crested the hilltops, golden and soft, pouring gently into the quiet valley like warm milk over stone. The mist began to lift, curling away into the woods and fields as the light slowly revealed the familiar shapes of rooftops, fences, trees, and earth. A rooster crowed, not harsh, but measured, as if offering a reminder rather than a command. The air held a quiet warmth, not yet day, but no longer night. Inside the cottages, signs of waking began to stir. Mara blinked open her eyes, her body still heavy with sleep. For a moment, she lay still beneath her blanket, listening to the hush of morning and the birds calling from the hedges. Her dream faded slowly, leaving her with a sense of calm that would carry through the hours ahead. Elder Tom's eyes opened just slightly. He did not rise, not yet. And as the very first birds began to stir in the hedgerows, their feathers ruffling with the hint of light, the village remained hushed, resting in that most delicate space between dreaming and waking. A moment when nothing is rushed. A breath held by the world itself. A gift of peace, given every morning to those who still believe in stillness. A pale blush stretched across the eastern sky, hinting at the sun's slow approach. But Eldergrove remained suspended in its final hour of quiet, as if the village itself wished to linger a little longer in sleep. The mist had thickened slightly, curling around fence posts and stone steps like drifting silk. It muffled sound, deepened shadows, and turned familiar paths into hushed dreams of themselves. Even the birds, now awake, sang in softer tones, as though they too understood the sanctity of this in-between time. Inside her cottage, Elda shifted beneath her quilt. The warmth of her cat pressed gently against her side, and her chest rose and fell in the steady rhythm of deep rest. Her dream was simple, a quiet pond surrounded by flowering trees, where the petals drifted down like snow and vanished before they touched the water. She sat by the shore, her feet bare in the cool grass, and felt no burden at all. Elsewhere, the fire in the communal hall had burned low to glowing coals, casting a faint amber hue across sleeping faces. The two brothers, Adric and Cale, remained still, their dreams now thinning like morning fog. One imagined the gentle rocking of a boat, the other, a wheat field stretching forever into the horizon. Jonan, still cloaked in sleep atop the granary tower, breathed slowly beneath the folds of his wool blanket. The stars above him had begun to fade, replaced by a faint wash of color, barely visible, but growing. In his dream, he walked a stone path through a forest where the trees whispered his name, not with urgency, but with calm affection. In her sleep, she smiled, her fingers twitching slightly as though shaping loaves in the air. The brothers in the communal hall were wrapped beneath heavy wool blankets, their breaths rising and falling in perfect rhythm with the fire's last embers. One dreamed of sailing down a river on a wooden raft, guided only by starlight. The other saw his childhood home, its door open, smoke rising from the chimney in the early frost. In Elder Tom's home, the wooden floor creaked faintly with the settling of the night air. The old man, unmoving beneath his quilt, was lost in a dream so quiet it was more like memory, a day spent walking among tall sunflowers, his wife's laughter carried by the wind, his hand brushing hers as they strolled. High in the granary tower, Jonan remained still, his cloak wrapped tightly around him. Though asleep, his posture hadn't changed, as if even in rest, he knew the night was sacred and must be kept. A soft light from the distant stars lit his features, and his dream was simple, a quiet field, a clear sky, and the steady hum of bees and lavender. The river whispered still, winding through the village with patience and grace. Along its edge, reeds swayed almost imperceptibly, and tiny insects skimmed the water's surface. The sound was soothing, a gentle murmur of earth's lullaby. It spoke not in words but in feeling, in the way a mother rocks her child or how the trees shift to shield a nest. The oak tree in the village square, older than any man alive, held its breath. Its branches reached up to the fading stars, leaves glistening with dew. It had stood through countless nights like this, and would stand through countless more, bearing witness to the silent, sacred sleep of those below. And still, no one stirred. The peasants slept, some curled beneath patched quilts, some sprawled across straw mattresses, some tucked side by side near stone hearths that glowed faintly in the dark. Shifting slightly now and then, but content in their wooden shelter. A lamb twitched in its sleep, dreaming of running through clover fields under wide skies. The village square, so lively during the day, now lay hushed. The stone well glinted faintly, its rope coiled neatly beside the bucket. Nearby, the communal bench sat beneath the oak tree, gathering dew. On that bench, long ago, stories had been told, bread broken, songs sung. Now it simply waited, as everything did, for the return of morning. The granary tower's silhouette stretched across the grass as the moon slid higher, its glow pale and even. Jonan no longer watched. His head had nodded to one side, his breath deep and slow. The stars above him shone down on closed eyes. In his dream, he walked through fog on a hilltop, where a distant bell tolled once, and the sound echoed through his bones like warmth. And still, the peasants slept. Their bodies rested. Their thoughts floated gently, free of burden. Their dreams unfolded slowly, like petals warmed by light. Outside, the fields held the memory of footsteps and the promise of more to come. The crops, kissed by moonlight, rustled so faintly they might have been exhaling. The land was full of breath, of life holding itself tenderly. No wind, no words, no worry. Only the night. Only the peace. Only the peasants, wrapped in slumber deep as the soil they knew, the soil they trusted, the soil they called home. As the night wore on, the sky shifted from deep indigo to a softer shade of blue, a quiet signal that dawn was near. But for a little while longer, the quiet valley remained untouched by morning. A gentle mist began to gather across the fields and low pastures, clinging to the earth like a final layer of sleep. Inside the cottages, the stillness remained. Mira, the baker's daughter, sighed softly in her dreams as the scent of warm bread filled her imagined world. She stood in a kitchen that opened onto an orchard, where pears hung ripe and golden. Caught in that space where awareness becomes weightless and the night wraps itself around you like a second blanket. The stars above him blinked slowly, as if breathing. Farther down the valley, where the fields gave way to forest, the wind moved gently through the trees. Birch, oak, and ash swayed like ancient storytellers, their branches creaking softly with age and wisdom. The village had grown near them, beside them, never against them. And in return, the trees stood watch, silent guardians of the peasants' rest. The night continued, deep and undisturbed. No carts rumbled down the roads. No doors slammed. No voices rose. Only the pulse of the land. Only the breath of sleepers. Only the peace of a world that asked for nothing more than rest and gave it freely in return. And still, the peasants slept on. In the deepest hours of night, when even the stars seemed to hold their breath, the village of Eldergrove lay suspended in perfect stillness. Not a breeze stirred. Not a footstep echoed. The entire valley was wrapped in a soft, dreamlike silence, as though the world itself had paused to rest. Within her stone cottage near the edge of the woods, old Elda turned slightly in her sleep. Her cat, curled like a comma on the pillow beside her, purred faintly. In her dream, she walked through a field of lavender that never ended, the flowers swaying slowly in a golden light that never faded. Her face, lined with time, was peaceful, like someone returning home to a place she had always known. The forge, long cooled and quiet, stood like a monument to the day's labor. Osric's tools hung neatly along the walls. The anvil gleamed dully in the moonlight that slipped through a high window. In his room above the workshop, the blacksmith dreamed of a bell he never finished, a bell that, when struck, would ring only once, then bring silence more beautiful than sound. The barn smelled of hay and animals, but also of comfort, like childhood and patience. The animals slept on, wrapped in the comfort of earth and air and each other. The hours drifted onward, slow and silent, as if even time itself respected the peace that blanketed Eldergrove. The moon climbed higher into the sky, casting a cool silver light over the rooftops, hedgerows, and sleeping livestock. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called, low and steady, a keeper of the night's rhythm. Inside the cottages, dreams unfolded gently. Mira, the baker's daughter, dreamed of kneading dough in a sunlit meadow, where the flour rose into the air like snow and the bread baked itself in the warmth of morning light. Her sleep was undisturbed, her breast steady, arms tucked beneath her cheek in perfect stillness. Elder Tom's dreams were made of memory, of hay stacked high in golden barns, of dances around midsummer fires, of laughter echoing beneath harvest moons. He smiled in his sleep, one weathered hand resting on his chest, the other still holding his old carved staff beside his bed. In the common hall, the fire crackled low, sending flickers of orange light across the walls. Blankets rose and fell with the steady breathing of those within, travelers, field workers, and two brothers who had come from a neighboring village to trade grain for wool. Even in slumber, their fingers were still dusty from the road. Outside, the river wound quietly through the dark, whispering along the banks. Its voice was constant and calm, humming lullabies only the land could understand. Willow trees leaned toward the water as if listening. A fox trotted silently along the path behind the granary, its eyes catching the moonlight before it disappeared into the brush. The chickens didn't stir. The horses in their stalls simply shifted in their sleep, their tails flicking softly in the cool air. Jonan remained in the granary tower, his eyes half closed now, his back resting against the wooden wall. He was not awake in the usual sense, but not yet dreaming either. Inside a nearby cottage, Elda, a widow who lived alone with her cat and her memories, rocked gently in a wooden chair. The hearth crackled softly, casting dancing shadows on the stone floor. She stroked the cat's fur as she listened to the wind play in the trees beyond her window. Each gust carried with it the gentle hush of the woods and the fading echoes of birds settling in for the night. As dusk deepened, a hush fell over the village, not from fear or silence, but from peace. A candle flickered in each window. Doors creaked closed. Curtains were drawn. The valley sighed. And the peasants rested. In the large wooden house near the village square, the elders' council chamber stood still, save for the ticking of an old iron clock. It had been made generations ago by a blacksmith whose name no one now recalled, and its rhythm had measured the heartbeats of the village ever since. Further down the main path, two girls carried wool blankets to the communal hall, where those without fireplaces could spend the night in warmth. Their boots scuffed softly on the dirt as they whispered and giggled, weaving between fireflies that blinked like stars near the ground. And in the high tower above the old granary, where no grain had been stored in years, young Jonan kept watch, not for danger, but for tradition. His father had done the same, and his father before that. He leaned against the wooden frame, listening not for wolves or winds, but for the quiet beauty of the night. Below him, the roofs of the village shimmered in moonlight. The stars appeared one by one. First the bright ones, then the subtle ones, then the ones you could only see if you stared long enough. The sky above Eldergrove grew vast and endless. The villagers lay beneath it with the peace of those who had worked honestly, eaten fully, and loved gently. Some dreamed. Some simply listened to the night. Some rested with their hands folded on their chests, and smiles on their faces. And the village slept on, tending to the day's tasks with quiet dedication. The scent of baking bread mingled with the fresh fragrance of herbs, while the soft rustle of leaves and the steady flow of the river composed a gentle symphony of life. And as the sun climbed higher, casting its golden glow over fields and forests, the village thrived in its timeless harmony, a place where peace and rest were treasured gifts, held close within the hearts of those who called it home. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the fields and painting the sky with hues of amber and violet, Eldergrove began to quiet once more. The villagers finished their day's work with gentle care, their movements slow and deliberate, as if savoring each last moment of daylight. Mira closed her garden gate softly and made her way back to the warmth of her cottage, the scent of herbs and fresh bread lingering in the cool evening air. Elder Tom settled beneath the ancient oak, his eyes heavy but content, a peaceful smile resting on his weathered face. Jonan climbed once again to the granary tower, taking his place beside the river that gleamed like liquid silver in the fading light. The gentle murmur of flowing water whispered a lullaby to the valley, carrying the steady heartbeat of the land itself. One by one, the village lights flickered on, soft glows that welcomed the coming night. Windows closed, doors were latched, and the world slowed to a tender hush. And so, wrapped in the timeless embrace of earth and sky, Eldergrove rested, held safe in the quiet rhythm of its people, where peace was found not in haste, but in gentle presence, and sleep came like a soothing breath. Here, in this humble village by the river, the day ended as it had begun, with calm, with care, and with the steady promise of rest. The peasants slept on. The end.